Thank you all for being here today, and hopefully we'll have a great panel. I'm David Gold. I'm CEO of Dapix. We're building the FIO protocol, which is a blockchain usability protocol that will make crypto as easy to use as sending Venmo or PayPal in any wallet or exchange. And what I'd like to do first is maybe just have each of our panelists briefly introduce themselves, and then we'll kick off the topic.
Sure. My name is Brian Norton. I'm COO of MyEtherWallet. If you're not familiar, MyEtherWallet is a client-side, open-source interface for interacting with the Ethereum blockchain. Mu launched in 2015, about a month after Ethereum went to mainnet. I joined the company in 2017 as late 2017 as COO. And since that time, we've done a user interface overhaul to make transactions and interacting with your wallet more user-friendly. We've launched a mobile hardware wallet, and we just recently launched a blockchain explorer that just went into alpha.
I guess that's my turn. So my name is Ouriel, you've already heard before. And I'm the CEO of KZen Network. We just introduced today Zengo, which is a new category of crypto wallet. We call that keyless wallet. It's the first ever wallet that does not depend on a private key. So you have the not your keys, not your Bitcoin. And what we're saying is no private keys, still your Bitcoin. And so this is the first wallet that is designed to be adopted instantly, with no need to remember anything, with no risk of losing your wallet ever.
Okay, I'm Pierre, Pierre Noizat. I'm the founder of Blockchain.io. Blockchain.io is our third trading platform. We run and operate a spot trading platform since 2011, basically. We're the first generation platform. As early as 2010, that was phased out because at the time there were only 3 of them, and the other 2 were MTGOX and BTC. So we are clearly in the pioneer field, and it's better to say that these platforms were really paving the way for future technology, but it was still very much not up to speed with the security requirements of the field. So we launched a new one in 2013 that's still running without a glitch. It's been running for 6 years without a glitch. That's a Bitcoin Euro exchange on the premium.com domain name. And we launched in January blockchain.io, which is a crypto-to-crypto exchange with coins and Ethereum, ERC20 support, etc. We are also launching with it a non-custodial trading feature, working with Ohayon, the team that's behind the Tumblebit protocol, which is an interesting layer 2 protocol for trading. It's somewhat different from Lightning. I guess some of you are familiar with Lightning for e-commerce micropayment type applications. It's also based on payment channels, and that's what will set us apart from other platforms, the non-custodial feature. We think it's a better option than purely totally decentralized exchanges, because we still have the performance of the centralized order book, and yet we have this non-custodial trading feature that provides a layer of security that's very interesting. So that's it.
Thank you. Yves-Laurent, Kayan. I'm the founder and CEO of CoinPlus. CoinPlus has been founded in 2014 in Luxembourg, and we have developed a solution for the securitization of the proof of key. We have set in bars or in cards, we have set physical solution only with zero electronic, either on single support, which is the most simple way to get your token, or on multiple support, which means you get 3 cards with the rule of 2 out of 3, and you need those 2 cards out of the 3 to redeem the private key. So far, there is no private key until you have recomputed it, and it works with 2 companies handling 2 pairs of keys, and nobody has seen both secrets that help you recomputing the private key. So this is a very basic mechanism of cryptology, and it's process-based. There is a global patent pending on that, and we can do that on any kind of physical support as soon as you can engrave something on it. We are going B2B, and we are open to any kind of discussion about this non-custodial physical solutions.
Great, thank you very much. So we're here to talk about the managing public and private keys, and in the fiat world, that would be kind of like saying managing your money. But in the crypto world, it's more complicated than that. In the fiat world, most people, I would say, custody a relatively small amount of their fiat wealth, and they trust third parties to custody most of their wealth. Most people, at least in first world countries like France and the US and the UK, keep most of their money in a bank, as an example of a third party. So my question for whoever would like to jump in here is, do you see blockchain causing a shift in that mindset? Because that's the mindset that we've had for a long time among people. Or do you think that that will really persist and that centralized crypto exchanges will really continue to be the dominant model in the same way that centralized custody in the fiat world is the dominant model?
Well, as much as I'd like to say that I think non-custodial solutions are the future, and the future is now, and tomorrow, next week, everybody is going to be taking full custody of their crypto assets, I don't really think that's a realistic approach. I think that third-party custodianship has a place in wealth management for a reason. It provides assurance and it serves as insurance over your wealth, and so I think that mindset is going to persist for this foreseeable future. I think that what crypto allows for is for users to take custodianship of different types of assets, a broader set of assets than they normally would have. Now we just, we keep a certain amount of fiat, and then we put a certain amount of our money in different funds. We have custodianship for our stock certificates and all of those sorts of things. And now, as those lines between cryptocurrency and other digital assets start to blur, people are going to become more comfortable with the idea of taking that custodianship for themselves, if we can overcome some of the very real UI problems that we currently have in the space.
Yves-Laurent?
Yes, on our side, it's just a point of view. The perception of this custody in the day-to-day life is we just trust our bank, and we can discuss about that, but trusting the bank or trusting an exchange about private keys, about account, is a kind of issue, because it's depending on how robust is the exchange. We don't want to go too far on this exchange issue, but this is something that must be talked here, because if you don't trust the exchange, then you go back to the non-custodial solutions, and we are not used with that.
Right, kind of like at the times when there's a run on the banks because people lose trust in the bank, they have a run on the bank and they say, give me all my money, I want to take it out.
In some countries, they know that very well.
Yeah, I think it depends also on the type of assets. If the assets is truly decentralized, then there is no one to turn to in case of a hack. If it's centralized, and that's the case of fiat currencies, then you don't worry so much about custody, because you know the transactions can be reversed. I think we have, with crypto, we have hybrids, assets that are somewhat decentralized, but not entirely. As a result, you get a trade-off between the risk you take as a custodian and the trust you give to a third party. I think it will take a lot of education before people handle their private keys. If only I look at email, for the capability to sign and encrypt email. Today, very few people use a simple pair of RSA key to sign their email or encrypt it. So why would we expect them to come up with a private key for their financials? I think it's even, the stakes are higher, so it's even less likely that they will do it for their financials. So I think what we'll see is a range of assets, decentralized assets for the people that are comfortable holding their keys, and more centralized assets for people that are not so comfortable. And mass adoption will be about bringing up a gradient of assets in this on this dimension of centralization.
So we've brought up the topic of trust with centralized third parties, and And you know, the example I gave of run on the banks, and obviously many of the people here in the audience probably know that virtually all of the hacking that's happened in crypto has been on trusted third-party centralized exchanges. So if a user does want to use a centralized exchange because they don't want to self-custody most of their crypto, what would be some of the key things that you would suggest that a user should look for in a centralized exchange to make sure it actually is one that they can trust?
So first, I'd like to answer the previous question, if I can. So I'd like to zoom out, and managing a private key is managing a secret. And if we look at the history of human being, the history teaches us that human beings are very bad at keeping secrets. The kings and queens, the human beings, the politicians. Humans are prone to errors, are prone to bias, are prone to all sorts of things. And this recent history of crypto, but also the web, shows how many hacks happen because of that. And unfortunately, we have to agree that, you know, just by facts, human beings are not designed to keep secrets. They're not security experts, they will never be. And unfortunately, there is no better solution today than to pick your poison. You either have to be your own bank, or you have to trust someone that's likely to be hacked. And the good news is that there is hope, and that recent progress in cryptography, in particular in threshold cryptography and in multi-sig cryptography, enables best of both worlds. And I think there will be a new category of services, and we introduced one today, but I think there will be many more coming from other places, where the user will not have to choose between a non-custodial and a third party. You can have both, and you can have the convenience of owning your crypto, but not having to worry about your security. And that's where threshold cryptography is a wonderful progress for the industry.
Yeah, and that's a topic, it's a great topic, and I'd want to come back to that real quick. But maybe, Pierre, tell us what are some of the things from a centralized exchange standpoint, really quick, that you think a user, if they want to trust a third party, what should they look for?
It's hard to tell because it's very opaque, in fact, for the from the outside, and people can tell you the way they handle the custody, but they won't tell you the details, obviously, because then that could open up some opportunities for people to attack those systems. So as far as we are concerned, we use threshold cryptography, as you said. That is, in fact, we use a combination of multisig and what's called the Shamir secret splitting scheme, which is a very old cryptographic tool that's been used for 20 years. In cryptography, the tools tend to be from the 80s or the 90s because they are proven, and it's better to use proven cryptography than something that's been cooked just recently. So stay away from people claiming they have these wonderful new tools. For instance, Schnorr signatures have been around for a very long time, and so they are legitimately examined for a soft fork on Bitcoin to improve privacy on Bitcoin, because if you combine Schnorr signatures with key aggregation, another very old concept on cryptography, then you end up with a very nice cryptography privacy enhancing feature. So I think that's what to look for. Things that are over-marketed in general, I would stay away from.
All right, great. Or let's come back to the topic that Ouriel raised, which is I'm certainly in the camp of I think that self-custody or trusted third party, neither of those are good solutions, and that we have to come up with better solutions that give users a better choice. It's sort of a best of both worlds. So let's talk about what else is going on. Yves-Laurent, talk about a little bit of potential solutions that are starting to be developed that will give users a third option that's different than just either I have to trust myself or I have to trust a third party.
Correct. The thing is, as Pierre said, the cryptography is the basic, and we should take care about non-custodial. If you don't have your own secret, if you don't keep it, and if you should combine those multi-sig or multi-support, which we are doing, with trusted part, because on our side there is 2 companies and one is regulated in Luxembourg. We are based in Luxembourg as well. So if this regulated company doesn't follow this strict process, they make themselves in danger, and is that worthy or not? It's not a question. The fact is, if you put trusted part, and it can be 2 companies with this multi-sig that we have done, you can take 3 cards with 2 companies, so nobody has seen both secrets, and if you lose 1 card, you don't lose anything. So it's like common sense. You just take care yourself about something that have been made by the combination of multi-sig, multi-support, and trusted part. But this is not the only way to do that. It's just the physical way to do that. It's not about custody. It's not about high frequency trading. You know, it's about durability and very, very simple way to get your token.
Ryan, did you have something to add?
Yeah. So I think that what we're talking about now here is more like social key recovery and social key management, which I think does kind of is the easiest, the most simple and easily understandable way to do what you're talking about, like more or less sharing custody without anybody taking full custodial control. I do think that when we're talking about one of the user experience problems that we have to deal with is we have to sort of translate this idea of very complex cryptography. I agree with what you said about not jumping on board with necessarily the new tools, but also having users, and even sophisticated users, wealth management users, for them to also be part-time cryptographers and to know where the state of the technology is at any given moment, that's a huge hurdle. That's a really high bar to set for when normal people are just trying to determine whether or not they should control their assets or a third party. So I tend to lead towards these more simple to understand, like you encrypt your private key, you spread it out over 3 people, and without, and with a certain number of parties present, you can recover or access a wallet. When that's something that is really concise and easy for people to understand, and it's easier to get people on board.
The problem when you start with this type of explanation is that it leads to a new set of questions. Like they may understand the first step, but then they will say, but what if? What if one of those guys is not here? What if 2 of those guys is not here? And the setup, how long does it take? And do I need to wait for those 3 to sign for me to recover? And by the way, social recovery is very tedious to set up. It's very simple to explain, very tedious to set up. The challenge is to create a user experience, and I think this is what is lacking today in the industry, where the onboarding is as simple and as fast as the explanation itself. And so you have to be careful with ideas that seem simple to explain, but very hard to set up, and even more hard to implement in a reliable way. So I think you said something that is very important. Is like, how do you verify? And that don't use an old the new cryptography because it's not been experimented yet. I think it has to be open source. It has to be verifiable. It has to be audited, and I think all those 3 elements today, to the questions of exchanges, are completely absent. Most crypto exchanges are not open source in their code. They do audits, but we don't know about them. So this is really like, we are at the prehistorical stage of where it should be in terms of transparency, but also best practices in terms of security. So I think there is something here that is really missing at the core. And I think we are still in the early days of that. But I think we have first to be aware of what's missing.
Depending as well as of the assets, if the token should be under the regulator or not, if the asset is under regulation. If it's not, it will be much more easier for someone to take it, or a new crypto exchange to do so. If the crypto exchange, or if the third part of the company wants to set a crypto asset, and which this company, if it's not regulated or if it's not subject to regulation, then the question of what about this private key is an issue. This is it. It can be as well regulation or not.
Great, thank you. So we've spent most of the time here talking about private keys. Private keys are what secures your crypto and gives ownership, really, of that value that's being represented on the blockchain. So let's turn and talk a little bit about public addresses, public keys, which is a really foreign concept to people who are new to crypto. It's something yet they have to deal with today with crypto. And you would think because they're called public addresses that therefore there's no risk around them. They're public, but in fact there are risks around public addresses. Our blockchain usability report, we found that almost 1 in 5 people had failed transactions and lost funds because of errors in the public addresses, and about 5 or 6% even were subject to man-in-the-middle attacks, because those public addresses can be changed by malware, and all of a sudden you're sending your crypto to the bad person. So let's talk a little bit about that, and tell me some of your thoughts on how there might be ways to improve the whole issue of public addresses and the security and the management of them.
By CoinPlus, we just set up the most simple way to take your token and not to be able to miss this public address. It's engraved in the physical support, and you just have to scan the QR code not to make any mistake. This is probably something that can be mainstream and adopted by all the people. You can give a crypto account instantly to the, for instance, to the 2 billion underbanked people. This is the public address which can be very easily read, but it's also on the physical support.
So David, your initiative with FIO is an interesting avenue to explore. I think it's worth mentioning, and maybe you can say a few words about it. But in general, it is an unsolved problem, because there are various approaches have been tried with Ethereum. We have these capitalized addresses, and if you just happen to downcase them, you just lose the protection. So it's in Bitcoin, it's more robust because you have a checksum at the end of the address, so it's somewhat more robust. But in general, they are not user-friendly, those addresses, and you have people sending Bitcoins to Bitcoin Cash addresses, for instance. That's not a big deal, but it's still a headache to solve the mess after that. This kind of issues is still lingering in our operations, and I'd say it's largely unsolved. That's why your initiative is quite welcome.
So yeah, I agree with that. I think Chinese have already solved the problem with massive adoption at scale of QR code reading, including from the mobile, which is something that is not well integrated by most services today. They assume you have 2 devices to QR code things. So that's interesting. It's a question whether it's going to be at the same scale outside of China. For me, the philosophy around sending money is like sending a message to someone where the message is money. And I think the experience should feel like that. It should feel like contacting someone and just sending a WhatsApp or a message, whatever it is. And ideally, you want the same experience as a contact book. This is not something we have today. This is something that some apps and services have tried to build, but at a very basic level. The problem is the lack of standardization, is the lack of familiarity with the experience, and is the lack of convention. So I think we're still at age 0 of that. Ideally, you would want to be able to send anything to anyone with the means that you already know. We are very far from it. We have proxies to that. What you do is one of them, ENS, built by the Ethereum Foundation, can't remember, is one of them, and there's other protocols. But I think what we want to reach eventually is the ability to just use your contact book the same way that you own and send whatever you do as you send a message.
Absolutely, yeah, it needs to be that easy for sure.
I completely agree. Just to make it a full, like, well, I'm going to shower you with praise too. Like what you're doing, is absolutely one of the things that has to be tackled immediately. I mean, in Ethereum we have ENS, but at this point, very soon it'll become a lot more streamlined process. But right now it's kind of a complicated auctioning process that a lot of people don't even know about. So, and that's really the only way to getting human readable addresses on Ethereum. So that's something that we have to tackle really quickly. I also agree with QR codes. It's something that's been around, that has been around forever. It's been used for all sorts of purposes in Asia and in Europe. It never took off in America. We're leaning into to QR code readers, and so yeah. And then there's other little fixes that we can do. There's more scanning of blockchain scanners, crawlers that can give scores. We have a solution called SafeSend on MyEtherWallet. That's powered by Coral Protocol. Other things like that can help, but really just making these sorts of things easy as to send as an email, that's the key.
Great. So we've got about a minute left, so we'll do a quick lightning round starting at the end here. And the question is, how long will it be before your web surfing grandma can use crypto?
The grandma, if she take care of that card, she can understand that she got her token. So it's our strategy to make it mainstream.
Okay, if we keep it short, I'd say she could already use it if someone is helping her get started. I think it's all it takes, get someone to help get started.
So sadly, my grandmother is not here anymore, both of them. But if she was here, her main problem would be memory. So I think you need a solution that doesn't involve memory. And so we tried to introduce something today. You should try it. Doesn't involve remembering anything. I think there will be more of that. And you know, Zango is probably the first experiment in trying to do something that is memory-free. And if something was to be built that would be a winner for my grandmother, if she was here, would be something like that.
I mean, again, my grandmother isn't with us either, but if she was, I think that I could get her up to speed in an afternoon, but then she'd ask me, but why, Brian? Why?
Great. Well, thank you all very much. Appreciate it. Great panel.